I'm Tom Roston, and I'm with the actor Edie Falco. She's in the film Outside In, which is coming out next week. It's a fantastic film. It's a drama in which she plays a teacher, and we're going to see a trailer for it. But first, I'll just mention really briefly, I don't know if she really needs an introduction. She's an actress that many of us have followed. She was in many of my director, one of my favorite directors is Hal Hartley, and she was in those wonderful films. So early on, I got a glimpse of her and was watching her, and then she had a bunch of TV roles, and then of course the role as Carmela Soprano made her an icon, both the character and the actor. One of the greatest shows of all time. But incredibly, she turned on a dime and went right to Showtime and had a role as Nurse Jackie, a show that had the same number of episodes, I think, right?
I think so, yeah. Pretty close.
It had the same length. A successful show, so she did the seemingly impossible, having this incredibly juicy role and then turning into another role. And she continues to have great work in films like Outside In. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about The Sopranos. We're going to talk about Edie. We're going to talk about whatever's on our plate, right?
I'm here to serve.
Thank you. So let's watch the trailer first, and then we'll get to talking.
We're a free man in America. Look at this! His first beer in 20 years!
Okay, everybody, Chris's high school teacher's here. If it wasn't for you, Chris would still be in jail.
Holy moly. You're real.
You're gonna come over and you can get to know Hildy and Tom.
He's here. Congrats on your release. Maybe now I can get my wife back.
A lot of guys get out and think they're free, but you're not free yet. Not by a long shot.
Okay. You go up to your file.
So, what is the most different?
Smartphones, whatever everyone's obsessed with.
What was it like? How'd you get through it?
Your mom is what got me through it.
Where were you?
I was with Chris.
Oh.
I'd rather you not bring your charity work home.
Come on, put it on.
Get out of here.
I just want a simple life. Come home every day to somebody that I love and be good to them. I want you.
Chris, I have to save my marriage. Oh my God. Tom, we can be friends.
We're not friends. You're the only person I can talk to. You're everything to me.
You have a whole big new life in front of you. How could you possibly know that it's me that you want?
So that was Outside In. The director is Lynn Shelton, and the writer and your actor is Jay Duplass. How did this film come about for you?
Well, it was sent to me, and I was told that Jay Duplass was going to star in it and had co-written it, and I knew Jay a little bit from a previous movie I had done, Landline, that he was in. And he just was one of those people that immediately makes you comfortable, and he's funny and easy and kind. So that was a big selling point.
And the character is this teacher who is in a difficult family relationship, strained marriage, difficult teenage daughter, or at least the relationship is difficult. And she looks for some meaning by helping a student of hers, right?
Right.
How did you find this character? Like, what were some of the main points that allowed you, the hooks that got you into this character? Was it just the script?
I don't know. I think it was just the script. It felt like it was as natural a progression from A to B to C as as one can read in a script. It sounded like people talk. There was not a lot of exposition. It was her sort of trying to thump for her way through a part of her life she hadn't planned on, feelings that are not necessarily welcome, all that stuff. I mean, that's the stuff I live for, you know, to see in films and to participate in films. That's what moves me.
There's a new movement, I mean, maybe it's been the last 10 years or so, of these independent films that don't have these big showy roles. They're just filmmakers and writers and actors that seem to get together and explore character a lot. And do you, I mean, the Duplass guys, I mean, there's like Joe Swanberg, there are a lot of filmmakers out there, Lynn Shelton, the director, who are doing this work. I mean, do you have a sense that there is a movement going on?
You know, I'm the worst person for a question like that.
Okay.
I have never have any sense of a larger picture.
Okay.
Like my life is kind of like right in front of me, you know. I love the thought that that could be the case, and you know, the movements like this happen all the time.
Right,
you know, like
sure.
the different kinds of characters are suddenly becoming interesting for audiences, and you know, the reality is, majority of life takes place in those, you know, moments that are not hugely dramatic. Let's say, you know, the gray areas of existence, and they're tremendously beautiful and exciting to write about.
Right.
I think to perform too.
When I see a movie like this, I always go back to Box of Moonlight. Do you remember that movie? It's a long time ago. And just like these independent films that, you know, that just, like we were talking about, they just hit those dramatic gray areas.
Right.
And it's not there are no black and white characters necessarily.
Right. You just leave the theater with a feeling that is almost impossible to describe in language. But
so Lynn Shelton, you're working with a lot of female directors. Is this just a coincidence? Is this a new thing for you?
It is a new thing for me. I think it also is just par for the course for the fact that this is the way our culture is changing. And I'm talking about before this most recent change. Everything I've gone on to in the last 10 years, there have been more and more women involved. And the director, the DP, I'd look around and like, you know, we're not quite at half yet, but you know, in the crew, there's so many women. It's really tremendously exciting. But no, it is coincidence.
You've got an upcoming film with Nicole Holofcener, one of my favorite directors of all time.
Yeah.
Tell me about what was it like working with her?
Also fantastic. She's smart and funny and self-deprecating and perceptive, and also very easy to be with, and clearly knows what she's doing. And she was always so well prepared, but also ready to throw out a shot if it wasn't working. I just sort of felt like she had a real command of the set, and I loved it.
You talk about you're not a part of movements, but I mean the Me Too movement is, you can't be an actress and not be aware of what's going on.
Oh, I'm totally aware of it.
What's the feeling for you? Or I mean, have you tried to take an activist part in this? Have you been asked to?
I have been asked to, and I have gone to meetings, and I do. It's exciting. I mean, you feel it in the air. A certain kind of confidence in the way women are carrying themselves these days. The idea that, you know, less apologizing and more just kind of taking a stand. And yeah, you definitely, I mean, it's in every walk of life now. I mean, it's a tremendously exciting thing to be living through at my age. And I'm also raising a daughter, and, you know, that she will grow up with this, ideally, always having been the case. That, of course, women get paid the same, and, you know, that there are half as many women doing this as there are men, and all that stuff that, you know, has not always been the case.
Have you thought about taking a more active role, a more public role in this whole thing?
I have gone to some meetings, and I am happy to. I mean, I've been to marches and worn T-shirts and stuff like that, and so yes, I am. And it is important. My story does not match those. You know, I've had a very different experience in this business. For whatever reason. So though I sympathize and empathize, it is not my story, which doesn't matter. I mean, that doesn't necessarily affect one's ability to get involved. But the truth is, I've committed myself to very many things that I care about, and I like to give myself wholeheartedly. And I do know when I'm spread too thin, so I do what I can where I can.
You said you commit yourself to certain issues. I know you're a vegan, right?
Yes, I am a vegan.
So
well, that's oddly enough a very big one is PETA. I do a lot of work with PETA, and they asked me to do something, and I'm there in a heartbeat. It just is. Who knows why one grows up with an affinity for animals that is you know, one of the largest I feel.
As a child?
As a child, we always had pets, and I've just always been an animal lover, and I have pets now, and I've rescued lots of pets throughout the years, and it is a, you know, it's not like, oh, they're cute and cuddly, that too, but it is a soul thing for me. It's a spiritual thing for me. Like, you know, you look into the eyes of an animal, and it feels sacred in a way, you know. And who knows why that happens to me, and it doesn't, and other people will shoot that animal, you know what I mean? But I feel an obligation to look out for these gifts that were given us as humans, to share the planet with.
So that belief system, do we ever see that in characters? Can you trace that to, or?
Not really. I mean, you know, characters really are characters in that they're not me. It was funny though, in the Louis C.K. movie that no one has seen, my character says something about...
I love you, Daddy, right?
I love you, Daddy, right.
That's the name of it.
The name of the movie. Where he said something, I say, like, oh, you wanted me to get a horse hanging from a helicopter, and I went and did that for you. And I actually said to Louis, I work with PETA. I don't know, am I being crazy? This kind of makes me, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure. Anyway, it was the first time I ever came face to face with. I wasn't sure how this was going to play. Even the image of a horse hanging from a helicopter, funny as it may be, does something different for me, and it does something way different for PETA people. So anyway, that's the first time I came up against something, a belief of my own that complicated my work life a little bit.
I don't know how deep we can get in here, but we talk about Louis C.K. Obviously,
I'll talk about Louis C.K. any day of the week.
Okay. The fact that he's been, you know, accused and I guess maybe he's confessed. I think he confessed to all these awful things that he was doing with women. In terms of your belief system about the people who you work with, I mean, are you shook? I mean, is this something that you knew about? Or are you aware that?
No, I mean, I knew nothing about it, and you know, it's such a tricky subject, and you know, there must be a place in the world where I would feel comfortable really saying the way I feel about some of these things, but I haven't found that yet. It's because I'm, you know, I don't want to insult anybody or hurt anybody's feelings, and my experience is not everyone else's, vice versa. So you know, I have to say it's a little hard that the people who have copped to these things that they've done are the ones who have been, you know, the floor fell out underneath them and they've disappeared. But Roy Moore is still walking around, you know. It's a strange, strange time. And, you know, I don't know, people mess up. They do. I have. Everyone I love has. And that is not who they are. It is something they did. And I think everybody deserves to kind of come clean about these things and try to find a way to go through their life without doing them, especially if they're hurting other people. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of gray area here, but since we're in the beginning of a very low, you know, groundswell, I think it's hard to kind of get your bearings all the time.
I'm sorry, but it's hard for me not to have this conversation and not think about Carmela, a character who spent so many years with this tragic hero, trying to figure out how, I mean, she was always such a noble character, and I think so many people try to understand Tony Soprano through her, or they got to see him through her. Does that character, do you think that character, I mean, does that character inform the way you think now, do you think, of somebody? Or, do you think she enhanced your tolerance, or not your tolerance, but your understanding of human behavior?
I don't know. I
Come
mean,
on,
I think
all your characters do that, though?
I don't know which way it goes.
Okay.
You know, I'm not sure that my understanding of human behavior does not in some way inform the portrayal of a character. I'm sure they feed each other. But also the stuff that I choose to do are by writers who understand human nature. You know, I mean, the stuff that is more surface level written is really of no interest to me. And there are a lot of actors who could do that stuff. And I'd rather do stuff that's more complicated, that isn't pretty, that's messed up, and where you're going to find people who can argue every angle of it. But yes, I think, you know, Carmela loved him. When you love someone, it changes everything. You know, it's like kryptonite. You can't see what's actually happening in front of you. 2 words, Ivanka Trump.
Right.
With all due respect.
Right.
You know what I mean? There are certain things you just can't, it's just like you get static when you think about it. So she loved her husband. She knew what he did. I don't know how much time she spent thinking about the details, you know, Carmela. So, you know, she lived her life under the boundary of this is my husband, this is what he does.
Right.
And my life will exist within that.
So raising children in the age of Trump, how difficult is that for you?
Every moment is a learning moment. You know, I remember the night of the election, my son stayed up with me, and of course, you know, none of us could have imagined that this would happen. And it was whatever, 2 or 2:30 in the morning when I really, it was some of the best acting I've ever done. Because I was like, well, look at that. Look what, this is what you call a democracy. You win sometimes, the person you want to win wins, and sometimes the person you don't want to win wins. And you find a way to make your way in the culture in this country with someone you don't like in charge. And that's kind of the way I was going with it.
Right.
He kind of bought it, and then since then I haven't stopped cursing, so I think...
So now he knows.
Now he knows it was all a load of hogwash.
Right. Just, you know, one last question for you. I guess, you know, where do you see this going? What's your next role? What do you most want to do next in your career? What's next?
I never know. I never know. I know when the script comes and it's in front of me, I'll say, that's it. That's the one. And I have been, like, divinely led, I have to say. I mean, just I've been so lucky, the stuff that has come across my path. Since I don't have a plan, I never really know what's happening next. It's the luck of the draw, to some extent. I've just been so thrilled with the things, one good thing after another. And the fact that I'm finding myself with a bunch of independent films, again, is so lovely. It's how I started, you know, a lot of years ago. And I forgot about all the things I love about the feeling of being involved in an independent movie. It's just nothing like it.
But with kids, I mean, if a big blockbuster did come along, a big payday, like
one
of the Star Wars movies, I mean, no?
I don't know.
No?
I just don't know. I mean, we'd have to be, I don't know, either an actor I adored, working, I don't really know. I never know until it presents itself. I've taken some jobs where I years ago would have thought, like, what? And I've passed on some that I would have thought. So but I go with whatever I'm feeling at the moment, wherever my life is, because it changes moment to moment. So.
Right. Well, our time is tight, so unfortunately we have to go. Edie, thank you so much for talking to us.
Pleasure.
The movie's coming out next weekend in New York and LA. Tune into all of Salon TV's shows by liking Salon on Facebook and opting in for notifications. You'll get updates when we're live. Thank you.